sinking in sand? Are you walking on water, or are you sinking in sand? Are you walking on water, are you sinking in sand? You see the heavenly Father said, let the sun redeem man.
What's up, everybody? This is Alan again with The Building. I know that the most recent video we shot was from Genesis, finishing off chapter 9, and we went through the genealogy of Noah in chapter 10, and we got through the story of Nimrod in the Tower of Babel in chapter 11. All I did was really go through a skim version of that section. So this video is going to dive deeper into chapter 10. Why? Because this is right after the flood. Again, as I'll repeat what I said in the last video, that this is all happening, the genealogies here are not before the Tower of Babel. These are just giving you the lines, and then it gets into some of the stories. So pay attention to that, because it's not all these things happening before the Tower of Babel. It's actually at the Tower of Babel that a lot of these things start taking place. So let's go through it a little bit. So you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, they're the sons of Noah. Japheth is the older brother. He's the oldest brother. And so let's go ahead and look at these lines here and see where we get our different nationalities from. Because this is where it really all starts. It goes back to, there's a lot of archaeological finds that back this up. So let's just kind of look at it. Now, through Japheth is really where we get most of our Europeans from. So as you go through the Bible there and you're looking at chapter 10, you can kind of follow along a little bit. I'm not actually going to read it from the Bible. So if I do get some of these things mixed up, just bear with me, but you can still follow the line there. So first we come across Gomer. Gomer spreads out and creates what we have today as Germany. Then you come to Magog, and this is where we get more of the Russians from. The Madai is where we get the Kurds. Javan is where we get the Greeks from. Then you get on to Tubal and Meshech, and this is where you get northern Turkey and Russia, right through that area. And then Tyrus actually spreads out and becomes Italy. So some of the genealogy there of Gomer, you have Ashkenaz, which German Jew line, and then Riphath and Togarmah becomes Armenia. Then you have the line of Javan or Javan. You have Elisha, which is Cyprus. Tarshish, which is this is a little bit harder to understand. Some say that this is where we get Spain from, but there's also some lines out of the Stonehenge that point to more of a Britannia area. And then you have Kittim, which comes out of Cyprus, and Dodanim, which is more of your Rhodes area. And then it specifically mentions this is the area of the Gentiles, the nations. That's what Gentiles means. And this is also the first time in the Bible that the words family and nations are actually mentioned. And to tie the word nations in with Gentiles kind of shows that significance there. Like I said, most of the time when you come across a word in the Bible, it will give you the definition of it as far as how it's going to be used. Now let's look at the story of Ham, or the genealogy of Ham. It mentions Cush as being his son. Cush is where we get Ethiopia and some of Arabia. Mitzrayim is actually, that's what Egypt is called, and that's the Egyptians. Put, or Foot, however you pronounce that name. This is where we get Libya and Northern Africa. Canaan is where we get the Phoenicians from. Now the line of Cush, you have Seba, Havilah. In Solomon, he talks about the gold of Havilah. Sabta, Rama, Sabteka, or Sabtecha, however you pronounce that, Nimrod, Rama, is where you get Arabia from. Now, Nimrod, again, I mentioned that his name turns into Baal and Malak, or however you want to pronounce these words, Beelzebub, those type of things. This is actually the source of the satanic religions right here through Nimrod, where he wants to become like a god, and he does become a god, the sun god. Babel is, in other words, it's a gate of God. And this is where we get Babalu and ultimately Babylon from this Nimrod. So throughout the Bible, you hear Babylon all the way up till Revelation when Babylon is finally destroyed. And why is that? Because Babylon is where Nimrod started the satanic religions that we have today. All the different, I mean, even when you look at the Muslim religion, and you see that Gabriel came and saw Muhammad in the cave, and instead of saying "fear not," he actually choked him out. Hey, write this down, and Muhammad's like, "I can't write. I'm illiterate." But this is where all the satanic line comes from. Semiramis, and you can see that she's the mother of all the Harlem in Revelation, and Tammuz, their son. You can just look at my Christmas video and you can see more of that there on those things with Semiramis and Tammuz and the sun god and the worships thereof. This is also the first time that we get the word begat. So there's some type of he's really wanting to put forth some extra on this name, Nimrod. We know that there's going to be more of a story about Nimrod being brought forth. There's a significance to the word begat there. Now let's look at the line of Shem. Out of the line of Shem is really where we get Abraham from, and then all the other genealogies that we have following Christ's line and into our line comes back from Shem. So you have Elam, which is actually where we get Persia and Iran from today. Asher is Shinar. And then you have Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram, which becomes the Arameans, and Syria. This is also where we get the Aramaic language from. So the original Hebrew language was written in more of a pictorial language. So each letter actually had like a picture associated with it. And then Hebrew language finally turns into an Aramaic letters and things like that. And that's how they write now. So when you get to Aram and the children of Aram, the first one you come to is Uz. And this is important because when you get to Job, you see that Job is from the land of Uz. And going down further, you finally get to Eber, and Eber eventually becomes the Hebrews. And then you get down further and you see Peleg and Joktan, or Joktan. Peleg, it even says it right there that this is, divisions, and we'll see that coming up. But Joktan is more of the Arabian tribes. And then you'll notice that he has a son named Jobab. And it is sort of believed here that Jobab is actually where the book of Job is from. This is his son here, Job, or Jobab. Job, the book of Job, there is no definitive date given for that book. Where it falls in the Bible isn't necessarily that time frame. It's just kind of thrown in there. But nobody really knows for sure where he falls or how that comes about. So it's very interesting to note there. One of the other things I really wanted to point out about this time frame that we're looking at with the genealogies and the spreading out of the nations and things like that is from all over the world. There's over 240 civilizations now that have recorded stories about the flood. Some of them are a little bit different here and there, but for the most part, they all talk about a global flood. And you can find those all around the world from back in ancient civilizations. So it's very apparent that from the line of Noah, the story spread amongst the grandchildren, amongst the great-grandchildren, and as the nations spread out across the world, they started writing these things down, and these past, or the history of the flood and things like that. Even the American Indians have their own legends of the flood. So it's a very interesting story and study. Now, we're not sure if the land masses were still more connected than they are today. We know that there's a string between Russia and Alaska, a landmass connecting those two. Same thing over with Australia. Just a couple miles down, or not even that, there's a landmass, so you can easily travel. So if the water was lower at that point, then the people could actually walk across these land bridges and get to these other countries. So it's assumed that at the time of Babel, when God disperses the nations, that this is when they actually dispersed and went to other countries, or continents, I should say, and spread out that way. It's through these land masses, or land bridges, I should say. Because you can see that with the pyramids in South America and Africa and things like that, that they're just so, they're made so specifically like each other, that they had to have been created by the same type of people, or with the same ideas, and they're related in some way. You can see how they line up with stars, and things like that. So it's just a very interesting study. All right, well, I wanted to just go ahead and shoot another quick video and kind of go into this a little bit more, dive a little bit deeper, because I know when I was trying to get through the chapter and do more of just a Bible study, a reading, but I do think it's important to go back and really do some research and do some studying, and see where we end up. All right, hope this video blesses you guys. Hope you learned something. I know this was an interesting study for me, and hope you enjoyed it. Shalom.